we want the sleeper wide receivers in this class, not in the top 10 of Trevor's rankings, and maybe more guys that are going to be day 3 prospects in the NFL draft, but still guys that Dalton and I really, really like in this wide receiver class. So who's your first sleeper wide receiver in the 2025 draft?
I've got a later one. I've got one that Trevor and I disagree with a little bit. He's got him outside the top 200, I think. I have a couple of guys like that, but one of them I have bias to. So I started the last segment with somebody going to Las Vegas. This one I'm going to have somebody coming from Las Vegas, and that's Ricky White from UNLV. Look, this is someone 6'1", 190, doesn't blow you away with speed, but I think he's just a really smooth route runner at this level, right? I mean, obviously playing in the group of 5, and he was a high-volume target, but he's been efficient, whether it's outside. They started using him inside in the slot more, really competitive player, adds special teams value as well. I've never seen the best player on a team like it is with UNLV and Ricky White. Usually if they're going to be on the punt return team, they're going to be the returner. No, this guy was out there blocking punts. I think it was it 4 of them this year that he had, plus one more against Syracuse that he technically didn't block because the punter held onto it and all that. But I think Ricky White's a smooth football player. I think there's a little bit of his route running. He's not quite on the same level, but it's a little bit in the style of Rashee Rice, the way he was at SMU. I think for me, he was 220 on our big board right now. I would have him higher than that. I might take him, you're talking somewhere in the 5th round, but I think Ricky White's a good player to have on your football team between the receiving ability and the special teams. He doesn't blow you away with traits. He's got to be a little more physical. He's kind of got a thinner build to him, but I think he's somebody I would take a chance on day 3.
Yeah, it wasn't a great combine for Ricky White, but I do think this is a really productive player over the last couple of years. 90.8 PFF grade over the last 2 years. 2nd most receiving yards in the country over the last 2 years. 2nd only to Trevor McMillan as well. So does a nice job of finding the soft spots in zone coverage. He's dangerous after the catch too. And like I said, he's a really, really good special teamer too. But and solid athlete at best. He didn't really test out that well at the combine. He's not a great separator one-on-one either, but I do like Ricky White as a guy who went for you on special teams and as a blocker. And he's one of the most productive players in college football over the last few years as well. So I think that, a guy who's going to be picked on day 3, you got to contribute on special teams, and we've seen Ricky White do it. So I think that is definitely a very important factor for him. So I do like to shout out for Ricky White too, because I do think he's a really good college player and should be drafted somewhere in the NFL draft. The guy I want to shout out, Dalton, is Tez Johnson from Oregon. Now, I understand Tez Johnson is quite literally the lightest player we've ever seen at the NFL Combine. He checked in at 154 pounds. That is very light. And he only ran like a 4.5 in the 40-yard dash. So that's not great either. However, he is one of the best separators that we have in this year's draft. Over the last 2 years, a 100th percentile separation rate at 93%. 97th percentile against single coverage as well. And that showed up all week at the Senior Bowl against some of the best corners in America. He was lined up against Azareye'h Thomas on a few reps. And Azareye'h Thomas has a massive size advantage on Tez Johnson. So obviously, he tried to play press coverage on Tez Johnson. But with Tez Johnson's releases and his route running, he got open consistently against one of the best press man corners in this year's draft. So I still like Tez Johnson a lot. And the other thing, too, not a great combine for Tez Johnson, but his athleticism shows up on the field in our GAS metric, 99th percentile, elite quickness for the position. He gets out of his breaks with ease. He has the 1,300 yards after the catch over the last 2 years, most in the nation by nearly 200 yards. So it's really dangerous after the catch as well. And he's a high IQ player, and he finds soft spots in zone coverage. Now, again, very light player, 154 pounds, not a blazing fast player either, with only a 4.5 40-yard dash. So that is a question mark. He's quite literally the lightest receiver we've ever seen at the NFL Combine. But I think his separation ability and his production after the catch and the fact that he's more athletic on tape than he was at the Combine deserves to still be drafted somewhere. I still could see him being a starting slot receiver in the NFL.
No, absolutely. I'm with you. It's tough with him because you just sit there and you go, is it possible? Right?
Yeah.
150. Max, I haven't been 154 pounds since, I believe, the 9th grade.
Yeah.
I think I was in 9th grade the last time I was 154 pounds. So I think about that. But then you watch him run routes, and you watch, especially when he gets clean into his route breaks at the top of his routes, it's filthy. I mean, the ability for him to separate at the top of his routes is just crazy. So, and he showed it at the Senior Bowl, too, against the top competition. He was nasty down there, too. He was separating from everybody. So, is he going to get drafted? Sure. Would it even be fun if he got drafted by, say, the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix? That would be just a fun story, right? But he can be productive. But, again, The Texans tested this with Tank Dell, and aside from the injuries, he's been really good. And Johnson's even significantly smaller than Dell. I don't know that it can work. It's going to be a fun story to watch. I think because he's chalked up that such a light weight there, it's probably dropped him down a lot of boards a little bit to where he's going to be a day 3 pick. But he's somebody on day 3 you could take a chance on just to see if it's possible and if that route running can hold up in the NFL.
Absolutely, yeah. I like Tez Johnson a lot. For anyone who doesn't know why we think the Broncos would be such a fun fit, not only because he played with his college quarterback in Bo Nix. Bo Nix's family actually took in Tez Johnson when they were kids. Tez Johnson played the same high school as Bo Nix, and obviously they played together at Oregon too after Tez transferred in there from Troy. So it'd be really, really cool for Tez to reunite with the guy that he really grew up with in Bo Nix as his quarterback too. So I think that would be a really, really cool story if the Broncos can grab him somewhere, probably at day 3 of the NFL draft. Who's another sleeper in this class, Dalton, that you really like at wide receiver?
Staying in the vein of, and I'm actually going to do this twice here, undersized slot receivers, and I've got one from Virginia Tech who athletically is kind of a monster, and the problem is you don't see the surface level production because at Virginia Tech they had a very hard time throwing the football. First of all, it's a run heavy offense anyway, but also their quarterback situation there with Kyron Drones and some other guys they had throwing this year just struggled to complete passes. But Jalen Lane, 5'10", 190, tore it up at the combine, ran a 4.34 40 with a 1.5 flat split, 40-inch vert, 11 foot broad, 6.75 in the 3 cone, and the 99th, you just mentioned it with Tez Johnson, a 99th percentile separation rate this year, despite the receiving grades being low. Because I'll be honest, this is the type of player that gets kind of missed a little bit with the receiving grades, because some of that, a good chunk of it is based on production. But when you look at the tape and just the number of missed throws that there were at Virginia Tech when Jalen Lane was open, you're talking about somebody who I think, again, because you missed the surface level production, but an athlete, a separator, and somebody who just needs a better quarterback situation, that's somebody that gets taken on day 3 and is a sleeper slot receiver here. So I think Jalen Lane, the more I watched him, I was like, man, he's a burner. He's a real burner, and I think you're missing out a little bit if you don't at least take a look at this guy sometime early to mid day 3, because it's just really, when you look at his lack of production, to me, it just came down to the quarterback situation. Virginia Tech just could not throw the football this year. He only had 39 catches this year, I believe the number, 38 or 39 catches. Certainly, if Virginia Tech threw the football more and if they had a functional passing situation, he would have had a lot bigger numbers than that, because he can really play. He can really run routes and separate underneath as well.
Absolutely. I really like Jalen Lane. I think he's one of the best separators we have in this year's draft. And again, one of the most important parts of playing wide receiver is just getting open, and Jalen Lane is one of the best in the class at getting open too. So it could be a big-time sleeper and a guy that teams really like to get on day 3 of the NFL draft. All right, another guy I want to shout out here is Pat Bryant from Illinois. This is a guy who, not the best athlete overall, but really, really strong hands for the position, really good in contested catch situations as well. Only a 1.8% drop rate this past year. He's a really, really good blocker as well for the position. He's above the rim type of pass catcher as well. He's a guy who can make contested catches. And it actually showed more nuance in his route running than you would think for someone of his size. Now, he's not the best separator one-on-one. Again, not the best athlete either, and doesn't have a great long speed. But I think he could be a rotational X receiver, very strong receiver, good hands as well, and really good blocker. I think this is a guy that you just want on your football team. Again, he won't be a starting receiver in the NFL, but I do like him as a guy who could be a contributor somewhere on day 3 of the NFL draft as like a rotational receiver.
No, I agree, absolutely. I think there's certainly talent there. He came on this year because Illinois finally got some pass protection and allowed their quarterback to throw the football to him. But Bryant had a very nice season. I think you mentioned it. I think the body control helps him. I think he's a good, solid possession receiver. Got to get a little bit quicker in and out of the routes. I don't think he had the best Senior Bowl of the group down there, but certainly someone, again, I think early on day 3 you could take a gamble on and see what he can do on the outside for you.
Absolutely. All right, who's another sleeper in this class that you like?
All right, now we're getting to the super small slot receivers. Not quite Tez Johnson small, but not that far off, and you knew I was going to do this. Anytime I get to bring up an FAU legend, I'm going to do it. LeJontay Wester from Colorado spent this last year at Colorado. Look, measured in, I get it, only at 5'10", 163, but certainly plays bigger than that, has some punt return ability, was first team All-AAC in 2023, absolutely tore it up, was one of the best slot receivers in the country his last year, really all of his years at FAU, especially especially the last two that he was at FAU. And then you saw this year at Colorado, took him a little bit of time to get going, and then there was the famous play, the Hail Mary against Baylor that tied the game, and Colorado eventually won the game. But he really became their second-best receiver as it went on. Now, the lack of size, he's going to be a slot-only player. He's quick. He's very underrated also, I think, in contested catch situations. He's super competitive. Let me see the career contested catch rate. Talking about a guy who's 5'10", 163 at a 49% contested catch rate. I mean, he's competitive, solid runner, quick player. A 4.46 might have been actually better than I thought he was going to run at the combine. And again, I think he's somebody probably that has to start out as a punt returner. I think he could make a roster as a punt returner and then work his way into being a slot receiver. But you knew I had to mention the FAU guys when I can, and he's certainly one that went to Colorado this year and had a very good season. I thought he was their second-best receiver behind Travis Hunter as the year went on. And if he gets a shot in the 6th or 7th round, I wouldn't be that shocked, but I think that's where it starts is make a roster as a punt returner, work your way into the slot, and see where the role goes from there.
Yeah, again, he's a smaller player, but I do like LeJontay Wester. He's been a productive player over the last 2 years at Colorado and at FAU. And Travis Hunter obviously gets a lot of love in that Colorado receiving corps, but there were some other really, really talented players in that receiving corps, and LeJontay Wester is absolutely one of them. So I love that shout out there for LeJontay Wester. Of course, you have to do it with the FAU connection as well. My last guy I want to shout out is, again, one of the guys that one of our commenters shouted out earlier, and they know ball, obviously, Dalton, because Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas. I'm a big fan of this guy, honestly. He's been a really productive player in college football this year. He was the 5th most valuable receiver in the nation, according to our wins above average metric. 89.4 receiving grade you see right there. That was tied for 4th among all receivers in college football. Good size, 6'4", 202 pounds. He caught 54% of his contested targets over the last 2 years and a 90th percentile drop rate over the last 2 years. Very, very strong hands. Really good job of finding the soft spots in zone coverage. And you want to look at against top competition. Against Tennessee and against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, obviously Trey Amos, one of the top corners in this year's draft. Tennessee is one of the top corners in next year's draft in Jermon McCoy. Learn the name now. In those two games, and he was really guarded by those two players a lot in those two games, he had nearly 300 combined receiving yards against Ole Miss and Tennessee. So he produced against top competition as well. One of the biggest sleepers in this year's draft, and a lot of people don't even think he's going to be a drafted player in the 2025 NFL draft, but he's produced against incredibly good competition and great size, great hands for the position. Not the best separator, not the best after the catch, but I think he's worth a flyer somewhere on day 3 of the NFL draft for how productive he was at Arkansas this past year. Like I said, he was one of the most efficient, one of the best receivers in the nation, and yet he's talked about as like a day 3, maybe in a UDFA type of player. I'm a big fan of Andrew Armstrong, man. I think he will be a big-time sleeper in this year's draft.
So I'm with you on this. I'm going to give you all the credit for this one because there was a point when we were watching wide receivers, and you said to me, hey, watch Andrew Armstrong. And I'm with, because Isaac Tesla, his teammates, he's the one that's been getting all of the hub lately for having a really good combine, having a really good athletic profile. But Armstrong was by far the more productive of the two, and I think he would work. I think he works best. You mentioned it, beating zone coverage in the intermediate parts of the field. I think that's where he would work best. I think about it in a lighter version of, okay, if you're a team that really wanted Jaden Higgins and didn't get him on day 2, I think you could look in the 5th and 6th round at an Andrew Armstrong. He's got really good size. He was really productive this year with, again, finally a decent quarterback situation with Taylon Green. I was just looking at it while you were finishing the rant there. Number 350 on the consensus board right now. I think it's just
not draftable, by the way.
Right, not even close. I mean, I think
100 picks away from being drafted.
I think people are missing out because I look at a bunch of these names in front of him, and when I watched Armstrong, I went back and said, yeah, he's better than these guys. Mm-hmm. I think I don't know what's missing. I don't know exactly. Do we have athletic numbers? Do we have a lack of a 40 time or what? What is the deal here if we can find that, even if it's from Arkansas's pro day? Because I think he's better than a lot of these guys. To be at number 350, I mean, that's basically talking about he cleanly shouldn't be drafted. But I'm with you. I think he's a guy who should go in the middle of day 3.
He, in the relative athletic score, he scored at 8.49. So according to Kentley, plays an 85th percentile athlete at wide receiver.
6'4", 202, 4.51 40.
Yeah.
37.5-inch vert, 10.4 broad. I think maybe it's just because they've been watching Tesla and he really tore up the combine, and I think he's a decent player too. But I think there's somebody out there missing the boat on Armstrong. I think this is somebody, again, I think as high as maybe round 5, you could really think about as an alternative, again, to Higgins, as a possession, big-bodied X-receiver. I think that's where he would work best. I don't even think he got to show that as much as he could have at Arkansas, because their offense is very much like run the ball and take shots way downfield. And he's got a good idea of how to get himself open, much like Higgins does on the deep ball, more so with his technique and his size than blazing speed. 4.51 is good, but it's not going to blaze by a lot of guys, especially now with the way NFL corners are. But I'm with you. I think he's somebody that's missing on a lot of people's boards. And 350 on consensus basically, to me, means that I don't think a whole lot of people are watching him because he's really good. I'm with you. You get all the credit. If he winds up being a solid day 3 player for somebody, you're getting all the credit for that.
I appreciate that. So, yeah, if you want a sleeper in this year's draft, well, he might even be a UDFA, honestly, for the 2025 NFL draft. I would take Andrew Armstrong in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, I compare him to another big receiver that was a UDFA from Arkansas, Matt Landers, who was really much more of a size speed guy, and I think had a little bit, didn't have as much polish on his route running as Armstrong does, and wasn't. Landers had a very tall and thin build. I think Armstrong is a thicker built guy who, again, can work in those intermediate areas in an offense that lets him, because intermediate throws weren't really prevalent in Arkansas's offense. It's just a certain way that they run things. And that's what happens when you get to, we get to watch the college football all year. We do the college show all year. And we have an idea of like, okay, maybe these guys would work better in a different offense, because these offenses, just like with Jalen Lane, he doesn't get the ball much because A, they don't throw the ball that much, and B, they don't throw it effectively very well at all. So breaking some of these things down and finding where players can succeed, I think can help you find some of those sleepers on day 3 like this. I'm with you on Armstrong. He's pretty good.
Absolutely, yeah. 85th percentile athlete, and he was a top 5 receiver in the nation according to our advanced metrics, and he played in the SEC as well. So that's a draftable player to me, and the fact that he's number 350 on the consensus board, I think he's a big time sleeper in this year's draft. But
thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.